So Albert, before we start, obviously we've got a lot of new viewers coming on our channel now. Can we just get another bit of your background, please?
Certainly. Well, I'm a Scotsman, proud of it. I was born in St Andrews in 1949, the eldest of 5 kids, brought up on a farm. And at the age of 16, I came to London, where I joined the Metropolitan Police Cadet Corps. Had a great time there, introduced to all sorts of sports, judo, wrestling, rugby, hockey, etc. So I had a great 2 years in London, moved to Ashford. My first posting was at Rettendon, walking the beat with a young constable. And then my training school introduction to the Metropolitan Police was excellent, and I was posted to Bethnal Green. And then my career moved on, Bethnal Green to Chelsea, back to Bethnal Green, promoted to Sergeant, Carter Street to the Flying Squad to Brixton to Forest Gate to Albert Square, back to the Flying Squad, and then I ended up retiring as the head of CID in South East London. You would have thought after 30 years of the sharp end of police and that was enough, having dealt with a lot of dangerous, nasty people, and hopefully put the right people in prison after a difficult and often trying investigation, which that's what I'm experienced at. So my skills were in armed robbery and murder, albeit I did spend a bit of time in uniform, policing the rights in Wapping and in Notting Hill, but they weren't rights, they were just public order events. So Wapping was my only experience in uniform, having stones and bolts thrown at me at the top of News International. Anyway, so retired, 30 years police service. I enjoyed it. Best thing I ever did was coming down to London from Scotland and had a great career. Married with 2 kids who are now grown up. They're all in Holland today, so they've gone there for the weekend. So in relation to what did I do next, I went off to West Midlands and helped set up a senior investigating officer's course. Did that for a couple of months and applied to come back into the Met as a civilian and got accepted. And for 15 years, I dealt with the reviewing of murders and serious crime in London and around the country. And some particular cases involved Daniel Taylor, Rachel McKell, the Shirlins up in Lincoln. I did one in Scotland away up in Nairn, a job down in Bristol that was Yardies related, and I was involved with the Stephen Lawrence case, reviewing the 6 lines of inquiry. So that was as an SIO. So there I am. I retired 5 years ago, and I'm at Blackheath Rugby Club as a volunteer and team manager. My sporting days, as you can see behind me, I did well at wrestling. I represented Scotland at 3 Commonwealth Games, 2 silvers and a bronze. Played rugby for Blackheath, Kent. Didn't quite make British police, but I was European police champion, British police champion, British Open champion. And between working and sport, my family never saw me. That's what they say. But they see me now because I'm getting too old. So that's me, Albert Patrick. So why am I doing this review? What happened? How did I get involved? Well, David McKelvey, who I never worked with, never knew, got had no indication what TMI was, his company. He rang me up and said, Albert, have a look at this file. So I read it and it just didn't seem to stack up, which was the Rettendon murders, where Michael and Jack have both denied their involvement from day one. And when you look at it, and in my experience, I've also dealt with supergrasses. I've been personally accused of corruption by a DC supergrass. So I know all the difficulties that can arise in relation to dealing with the evidence from a supergrass, a resident witness. So I looked at it and I wasn't going to ignore the fact that Steele and Williams could have been guilty. It was just the strength of the evidence and what got them convicted. And I think when you look at it, it's the drugs involvement that they were in. They were caught back to rights on the day of arrest. Steele and Williams will say that they weren't involved in the earlier cases that Nicholl says he was. And then when you pull it all together and look at what the jury heard, we've uncovered a hell of a lot more that they should have, and Essex Police did a poor investigation. It was never exhaustive, and here we are 3 years down the road, still trying to get it to the CCRC with that magic word, new evidence. So that's me, Albert Patrick. I'm still ticking. I'm still alive. Am I enjoying it? Why am I doing it? Well, my kids say, Dad, you're wasting your time. What are you doing it for? They're only blinking well villains anyway. But at the end of the day, if that was my dad, locked away, nearly 30 years now, 80 years of age, category A, I'm sorry, but that is wrong. And hopefully one day, the truth will come out.
Welcome to another Liquid Bullet Productions. Back again with us for part 6 of the Essex Boys question and answers for the viewers. He's everyone's favourite. We get asked about when he's coming back on all the time. Mr. Albert Patrick, thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Lee and Roy.
You seem to have become one of our stars, Albert. Everyone just wants to hear from you all the time. Right, so we're going to go into the our viewers' questions for you. So the first one is from Nigel Martin. Can Essex Police be made to hand over any evidence they hold? If they don't, does that mean it's perverting the course of justice?
Oh, I wouldn't like to dig too deep into that one. The bottom line is we've asked to look at key documentation within their investigation. Basically, if I was still in the job as a civvy or cop, I would want to review this investigation, and to do that properly and professionally, you need to go right the way back to message 1, action 1, document 1, exhibit 1, statement 1, and do a proper review. And that is check, cross-check, and make sure nothing has been missed. They're not prepared to do that with me, obviously, and they say Steele and Williams have been to appeal court, CCC applications, and nothing untoward has come to their light. So they're asked to see our report. I hope that the defence team and David McKell will agree that Essex Police do get a copy of the report that's been worked on right now. I've seen the draft. It needs a bit of tweaking, but we're nearly there to hand it over, and then it's a case of watch this space. But if I would like to think that here we are with all the aggravation, all the troubles, all the bad press around police around the country as a whole, that we get the police back to where they should be, and that is serving the public that they're paid for. So I'll be highly, highly disappointed that they didn't take heed and work. I'm happy to work with them, with my experience. For me, the right thing to do is to appoint a new review team or a new re-investigation team, and I think it's close to a re-investigation, because you won't waste time, because if you re-investigate it, you then are doing 2 jobs at once. Yeah. Whereas if you review it, you just make recommendations that will need to be worked on. So for me personally, it needs a re-investigation on what we've uncovered and what others say is not right about this case.
Yeah. So the next question sort of leads on to the same thing there about the trust of police. So in the lack of trust with police lately, with corruption, rape, murder, etc., wouldn't it be in their best interest to be more helpful with your investigation?
I look forward to the day when I sit down. It'll take 1 day, 2 days to brief whoever, initially Essex Police I hope, but then whoever is appointed to deal with this. If there's enough new evidence to go to the Court of Appeal, then great, but it's more than that for me. It's about checking and double checking to make sure that nothing has been missed, and what we've uncovered, it's just not the Jasper account, it's a whole load of other issues that are just not right, and to build confidence in the police, what better way than for the Chief Constable to say, okay, David McKelvey and your team done a good job here, we need to look at it, and we're more than happy. Well, I am personally, I've got the time. I can sit down 1 day, 2 days, 3, I can sit down 7 days a week I've been doing it for 3 years, so another 2 years won't make any difference, because it's going to take that long to uncover maybe not who actually pulled the trigger or evidence to say who pulled the trigger, but bottom out all the loose ends of this alleged exhaustive inquiry, which just it was not.
Albert, just a question for myself here personally. As a friend of mine who used to be a police officer, and basically said, he got fed up and left because they were working more on statistics, solving little crimes for their numbers, rather than trying to solve the big cases. Is that maybe why they wouldn't review it? Because it'd take too much time and they'd be better off catching 10 people for stealing a fishing rod or something silly like that?
Right, you've hit the... I'll start again. 1995 was in and around the period of the Stephen Lawrence case. I know because I was the fifth SIO for Stephen Lawrence, and I was appointed to investigate the 11 new lines of inquiry that Kent Police had identified in their review of the case. And out of the Stephen Lawrence case, yes, other police forces should have taken note and dealt with the review process that was identified in the public inquiry and the systems that I got employed for another 15 years to deal with. It's all about supporting the SIO and making sure that nothing's missed. Can I assure you, in a high-profile triple murder investigation, the SIO would not have half a clue what was happening within his incident room unless he had been there before. There'd be too many things missed. They'd be running around at 100 miles an hour. They've got no staff, and then they settle on a line of inquiry. I've already said and I've described their line of inquiry is blinkered. And I've seen it in other cases I've reviewed where the SIO believes he's on the right lines, that's where we're going, that's where we're putting our energy, and ignoring other suspects, information, intelligence that sadly needs to be dealt with. Now, where did he get his staff from? It looked like it was drug squad, crime squad, division. They had to use the diving team, the diving team to look after Nichols. And they had other murders as well. Don't forget, it's just not the triple. They had John Marshall and other cases that were clearly putting pressure on the staff. Today, I would hope that if a similar murder took place anywhere in the country, within 24 hours, there would be a review officer appointed. He would do a review within 7 days, 2 weeks, let them get on with their investigation, revisit a month later, 6 months, a year, depending. I would sit down with this. If I was a review officer sitting down with Ivan Dibley now, I would say, Ivan, you missed that. What about that? What about that? What about that? Because I would have had the time to sit down and read everything. And it's about listening to your staff and making that sometimes difficult decision or easy decision to do this and do that. It is a process, it's a system that you only get from having done it, been there, seen it and done it.
Okay, next question is from Paul Warburton. If possible, could it be a foreign hit, the Dutch coming over in and out in the same night and leaving no evidence?
Well, there's no evidence to say that the Dutch were in any way, shape or form annoyed or disappointed or aggrieved with Tucker, Tate and Rolfe. It may have been the case that there was it's the other way around. If you listen to what was explained through Nichols, it was a bad cannabis deal and they went back across to Belgium, Holland to get their money back. The key name man there is John Stone, and he never came to give evidence, obviously, and I'm not sure if he was British or English, but John Stone is a name that if he was around today, I would want to talk to if he was in this country. Clearly, I've got no authority or power to go to Holland and start talking to a man who's been named at the trial. So does John Stone hold the key to what was the Crown's case, and it actually wasn't a bad cannabis deal. It was a deal that was sorted out, and who was the main player, who was the link to John Stone, because I think John Stone was known by both Nichols and Steele. So the drug side of it, I have not got to the bottom of. I have concentrated on the murder, but I'm quietly working away at making sure that there's nothing in the drug side of this case to help either way.
Okay, next question is from Leighton Brown. Do you think this case will ever be resolved and proved conclusively? With who, where and when?
From what I've seen so far, the simple answer to that is no. But there are advances in forensics. There are key exhibits that I would suggest need to be re-looked at. If somebody would just listen and say, look, the shotgun cartridges, and we've got Angela Gallop, who is more than willing to help. She's an excellent forensic scientist. She did a short part on the Sky documentary, but she's done other documentaries, and she solved Rachel McKell. Absolutely brilliant. Her work on that has just been highlighted on a documentary. So a lot of faith in Angela and the opportunities that are now available. There's a water bottle that was allegedly found, it's exhibited, and it's not photographs, I don't know what it looks like. There's still opportunities from within the inside of the bottle to do DNA testing. And also for me, there needs to be a fresh look at the blood. The word is spatter, not splatter. Where the blood is in the snow, there's little bits of it within the car, just to make sure that what the Crown's case took place down the lane. Where I'm coming from on that one is, I am keeping an open mind as to whether down the lane was the dump scene and they were killed elsewhere. I'm not ignoring that. It is in the system of the review, and I need expert people to look at my concerns, but at the moment I'm not having much luck, put it that way. And I may be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm looking at it from a new perspective, totally new. Because if you get somebody that says they were actually killed elsewhere, for me, you've got to investigate that. You've got to look at it. You've got to see if it stacks up. And at the moment, I'm not there yet.
Okay. Next question is from Del Morgan. What was the outcome of Paul Betts having shotguns stolen from his home weeks before the Essex boys shooting, and has that have any connection?
Simple answer to that is I haven't got a clue. I don't know. I'm aware of the shotgun issues that have been stolen. I can't ask him because he's passed away. And if that was relevant, I would need to revisit it. I'll have a look at that when I go back into the information around Paul Beck. So if somebody in Essex wants to talk to me about it, more than happy to discuss it.
Yeah. Next question is from Lucy Flynn. Can we ask Albert his thoughts on Carlton Leach and his involvement in the case?
Carlton Leach is an interesting character, if I can describe it that way. I think you'll find he was quite close to the Essex boys, in particular, I think Tucker, that's how it comes across. We've spoken to him, and he's given an account that we are, until we see all the documentation, we can't make a judgment in relation to what he says happened on the day after the murders or the days after murders in relation to could he help. Does he know more? Well, only Carlton Leach knows that. There is a message to say naming people, and it says that Carlton Leach knows more. Was he involved in the lure down the lane? Well, I think they would have gone down there if he said to Tucker Taylor, look, I've got to meet down the lane, I'll see you there at such and such a time. From what I've seen of him so far, listening to and talking openly on social media, I would hope that if he did know more and it could uncover the truth, he would come forward and say, well, this is what I know, to help prove one way or another. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It comes across as if he was sure that that Michael Steele was involved, etc. But I would want to know, well, how do you know that? And do you know who lured him down the lane? And do you know who's responsible? I would like to think he would have told us by now, but he hasn't.
Okay. Next question from Harry Jones. What else is known about the main suspect, being DH?
From the last time I spoke, absolutely nothing. Would we want to see him and speak to him? That would be relevant once we speak to Billy Jasper, because if you jump ahead of yourself, it gets confusing and not quite right. So if when, and fingers crossed it does happen, and we do talk to Billy Jasper, then we would then decide. I think it's a place point, really, when you think about it. He's a named suspect for a triple assassination, and here we are 20 odd years later, trying to prove or disprove. If he's alibied out of the country and got a passport and got witnesses to say, well, that should have been done at the time. It's too late now. And being brutally honest, I don't think we'll be going anywhere near Mr. D.
Okay, next question from Mark Hill. Were the Essex boys under surveillance, and why did the police not nick them for anything if they were?
Just because somebody's under surveillance, they've got to commit an offence before they get arrested. So that's it. I know that Rolf was disqualified and we see him driving a car, but they're not going to arrest somebody for was disqualified if they're looking at him for major drug offences. All three of them were subject of an operation by the local drug squad. I haven't seen anything to prove or disprove that they were under surveillance the night during the day, the 6th, because I would want to have seen the surveillance log. I'm told it was just an address, Rolf's address, that was under surveillance. So now I will be looking at, well, let's have a look at the log or the camera, the observation camera that was in place in relation to that address, to make sure that what Donna Jagger says took place actually took place, and from the phone evidence, if Rolf was in the right place at the right time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you put together using all the available intelligence evidence to see, and if the CCTV stroke surveillance camera supports it, then you're on a good point. I.e., did he take Donna Jaggers to Lakeside at 5:45 on the 6th? Well, she just left there, allegedly for a dress. What did she do with the little one, Gordy, the little girl, who wasn't well? And he just picked up, Craig Rolf had just picked up from his mum's at Bainbridge. So all those that I've been looking at already, and they're part of the point I make around the sighting in the Orset Cook being earlier in the day rather than later in the day. So my detective experience is ticking away in the background. It's a valid point, but for now there's nothing concrete coming out of it. But if were they under surveillance, I don't, that night, that day, I don't know. We're told it was just a fixed observation, and there may have been a detective in the OP watching and logging what was happening. But I really would like to see that. That should be in the documentation for the murder investigation. Will it be? Who knows?
Okay, next question. When can Jack Holmes tell his side of his story?
I think that will only happen if Jack Holmes's case goes to the Court of Appeal and he's found not guilty, i.e. his appeal has won. And when you look at the appeal that they had way back in 2012, was it, or sometime around then, when you look at that, I look at what the judges said around the cell site and all the other points. I got a little bit gobsmacked, thinking, hang on a sec, that's not right. But anyway, I wasn't there, so I don't know. So hugely concerned around, was the Court of Appeal a fair result, and did it satisfy me as a senior cop that the evidence that the Crown presented was strong enough to be upheld at a Court of Appeal? Too many holes in it for me. So that needs to be, that's the only way he's going to get allowed to talk, because his parole conditions are, you're not allowed to talk to the media, and that's why we're not. I would love to see him, I would love to speak to him, but I can't do it.
Yeah. Just a question from my own self there, just about that. Why is that condition on his parole about not being able to talk? Cause,
you asked me.
Because you get Kevin Lane done another miscarriage of justice time, but he's allowed to talk. So I just wondered.
Yeah, but was he found not guilty? Was the case proved? What was the case with Kevin Lane?
I think he was guilty. Yeah, he went to prison for it.
Yeah, that's the same as we're talking about here. But were the defence able to say that the charge against him, the murder, was discontinued, was proved that he didn't do it?
I think he's still trying to turn it over.
Yeah, he's still trying to overturn it. But he's still talking. He's singing like a bird.
You'll have to ask the parole board on that. I think it's because this case is probably the biggest
That's what
murder.
I was thinking. They want to keep it.
They
quiet.
just keeping it quiet. Yeah.
Can you release the name of the officer in charge of the murders, and also was his phone record included prior to the shooting?
Don't know the answer to that, but when you look at who was in charge of this case, you had Ivan Dibley, who was appointed the SIO and turned up 3 hours after the call to the crime scene. I think you'll find that Brian Story was actually at the scene as the local DCI, but it just says DCI in the log, but looking at the photographs I've seen, I think it was Brian. Neither of whom will talk to me. Brian took it over when Ivan retired, around the time or just before Nichols was arrested. And you got Ralph Barrington, who was the head of CID, same as I was in South London at the time, and he had involvement by talking to Nichols down the cell when he said he wanted to talk about the Rettendon murders. So they're the three senior cops, and above that you've got the gentleman with the hat and I forget the name of the ACC or senior cop for Essex, who went to the crime scene, trampled all over it, would never have been allowed at my crime scene, but that's another story. So he would be the same, and he was part of the senior management team that met on a semi-regular basis to discuss the case, as you would expect. It's called the Gold Group in the Met, I'm not sure what they called it in Essex. So all those senior police officers are known, and if you're talking about the telephone records, you'll be asked the question why, but I don't know the answer to that, being brutally honest. So, and the phone records, normally the mobile phones are job issue, so you at the time you could have got the data, from within the job. It's like Officer A, who was in a corrupt relationship with Nichols. They were looking at his mobile phone, no doubt his home line, and more importantly his office line, which he didn't need authority to listen into because it belonged to Essex Police. And there was complications in relation to how the evidence was presented, and the Officer A, DCA's involvement by running Nichols as an informant, and I would like to see the contact sheets and all the documentation around what Nichols has told Officer A in that period, from a registration to being paid out £400 for recovering his drugs from the art pit. Unbelievable. And other issues that, how did they know about there was going to be an importation from Holland and all the people involved? So lots of areas that I would wish to look at that I haven't been privy to because I just don't have that data to look at.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Laura Cameron. Why was Donna Jaggers put into witness protection?
Good question. I don't know the true answer to that. I've been nervous around Donna Jaggers from day one. When you look at it, she calls D.I. Florence, well, she gives her she gives information, not a statement, that D.I. Florence has recorded on an our officer's information and puts it into the Home's account to be actioned or for information. I won't go into the detail, but basically, she believed that they were going to meet I took her to Rolf, were going to meet Mickey the pilot. She didn't know who Mickey the pilot was to do a drug steal that night. That was her evidence, and that kick-started off Michael Steele, who was identified the next day by Mr. Dibley as Mickey the pilot was Michael Steele. Okay, so then when you look at when she makes her witness written statement, it's weeks later. In between, she rings up D.I. Florence and he comes and collects an Uzi submachine gun. No exhibits officer, no making the firearm safe, no statement from her at the time about the Uzi. At the time, taking it. She makes one later, and the first time she talks about meeting Mickey the pilot, as I said, is weeks later. Based on her evidence, it looks like alone Mick Bowman is arrested and charged, and he was supplying the machine gun, and the case is discontinued against him before it gets to trial in the magistrate's court. So I ask the question, why? So you've got Donna Jaggers, who's given evidence against Mick Bowman for the Uzi submachine gun. It goes nowhere. An officer I've spoken to in Essex says she was a witness from hell. They had a difficult time, and she is in the witness protection programme. We think we've tracked her down somewhere up northwest of England, but we can't talk to her because, like Nichols, we can't talk to him. So totally and utterly miffed as to how they dealt with Donna Jaggers.
Can I just pick up on a little something you said there, Albert? You said about when the officers when they picked up the gun and stuff, they didn't take a statement there and then. Is that unusual? It sounds strange to me that you wouldn't do it there and then.
How about arresting her for possession of an Uzi submachine gun? That'll do, wouldn't it? Come on, we're cops. She's in possession of an Uzi in a safe house. All right, in her favour, yeah, she is doing the right thing by getting a dangerous gun off the streets. Yeah, but yeah, if you look at what she says later, she's busy with Craig Rolfe in the travelling of drugs around and being back up. Who would you think that a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife are going to be stopped first anywhere? No, so it's good cover. Yeah, not saying that females are not involved in drug supply, but just looking at her involvement. Hopefully, we'll get some information from Brian, the brother of Craig, who is now talking, even on social media. So not stabbing Craig Rolfe in the back or Donna deliberately, unnecessarily, but there's something just not right about that relationship she had, or what she was saying and not saying to D.I. Florence in particular. Yeah. I'm nervous about it. Not nervous, that's the wrong word. I'm just concerned. Yeah, and then when you look at what happened to D.I. Florence around his relationship with the cars and Pat Tate's brother and the stolen car, or the cars that were stolen and sold on cheaply through the whatever system it was. There was a corrupt investigation, Operation Grenadier, that we need to look at and see what that's all about. It's the same with Apache and DCA. So that's the kind of worms, that's the corruption side of it that I haven't said too much about, because I'm trying to get Essex Police to talk to me and police to talk to me, because I don't particularly want to stab old Bill in the back. There's only a handful, if that, who... There's corruption in this case. There's corruption.
Okay, next question is from Donna Knight. Why is Mick Steele still in category A?
Well, hopefully on the 10th and 11th of May this year, a couple of weeks' time, when Michael's case is before the parole board, a full hearing, where he's going to give evidence. I've already sent a message through his solicitor that I personally wish him all the best. It's probably like Branson is, how come he's still a cat and he hasn't killed anybody? He might have hurt a few people, but he hasn't killed anybody. So park that for one moment. Michael Steele is a political prisoner, and to let him out or to uncover the truth and prove 100% that he wasn't involved in any way with the Rettendon murders will be a huge embarrassment to the criminal justice system in this country. And I think that's quite a bold statement, and maybe one day that will be proved, because there are people out there who know. You could just prove alive after 7 o'clock. For me, end off.
Yeah.
That is enough. Prove that Nichols 1010% was lying, manipulating, looking after number one, conning the judge, conning the jury, conning to a degree the police. Then Michael Steele, I just want to see him home with his family, simple as that. That's started for 10. It's like Jack Williams. In fact, that he's out and he's back home is great. But one day the truth will be uncovered. I'm totally convinced of that.
Just another question there, leading on to Mick Steele. It just says, so if Mick had admitted to the killings, would he be released and be home now?
I think that's true, yes, definitely. And I think Jack would have been out much earlier as well. That's the system. If you admit your guilt, even if you weren't, but if you had said, right, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet, I know I didn't do it, but I want to get home, I want to get on with life, I want to see my family again, then if you were to say, yeah, I'm sorry, and told a few porky pies in that process to probation officers, etc., and passed a few tests, then you would be out. But that cannot be right, can it? Great credit to Jack Williams for not doing as his dad requested and say that he was guilty when he wasn't.
Okay, so the next question is from Geordie. Can we ask Albert 2 questions? One, was Jack at the Wheatsheaf pub with the Passat, or was Nichols in Meadow Row with the Passat?
Well, the Crown's case is that Nichols was between the Wheatsheaf and Meadow Road, one when he looked at his voicemail at 1848 and at 1859 when he got the call from Jack Williams. If you look at David Brister's new evidence and his evidence, if I remember rightly at trial, in his opinion, cell site was imprecise in 1995 and that you couldn't get a signal in Meadow Road from the Wheatsheaf because of the hill and down the other side. Yeah, you could get a signal from the Wheatsheaf to Hockley, which is where Jack Williams' mobile phone bounced off. It also bounced off Ingatestone because it was a 5-second and a 10-second call. So first one to Ingatestone, no problem, that's towards Chelmsford, but then Hockley is back towards Southwood and Ferris, and that bypassed Rettendon Hill. And if you've been to crime scene like I have, it's down in a dip, and if Nichols was in Meadow Road, he wouldn't get a signal. Now, looking at what Nichols says, they called Sarah Earp to give supporting evidence that she saw a vehicle outside 2A round about, I think it was round about 7 o'clock or before, or just before, on her way home from work. Well, she doesn't say it was a VW Passat, and if you look and listen to Nichols' evidence, he went up the Meadow Road, turned around, came back, parked outside 2A, was there for less than a minute, 2 minutes maximum. The engine was on, the lights were on, it was cold. He got the call and he drove off. Well, Sarah Earp, for me, I would want to see what she told the police officer in the questionnaire in the house-to-house inquiry. I haven't seen that, not sure if it's been disclosed. I've read her statement, I've got a statement here, and it's just one line. She says, 2 vehicles. She doesn't say it was a Passat, she said it was like a if I remember right, it was like an Astra-shaped square, but it was beige. And when you look at who took the statement, it was D.C. Brown. So what is D.C. Brown, who interviewed Nichols for a long time, was looking after him in the witness protection system within the police station. I haven't seen an action raised to go and take a statement from Sarah Earp, but he does it and goes and takes a statement himself. So for me, where's the supervision? Where's the direction? Where's the instruction from the incident room to go and take that statement from Sarah Earp? And we're told that she wasn't comfortable going to the Bailey to give her evidence, but she did go. So she was escorted by police to go to the Bailey. So just little niggly bits there that I would want to just make sure that it was an accurate sighting. But no, she didn't say that it was a VW Passat, and she saw no one in that vehicle, and he was a big lump, wasn't he? Nichols was a big lump. Anyway, that's in relation to, do I believe that Jack Wounds was in the Wheatsheaf? Well, his cell site puts him there. He said in the witness box he was there. All right, he said he'd never been to Rettendon, but I've already said, well, I've never been to Rettendon, didn't realise I was in Rettendon. And then, and don't forget, Nichols is somewhere there as well, because at 1848 his cell site is pinging off Rettendon. So was he there just to make sure that Jack Wounds was okay with his car, and if he needed any help, he was there to help him, and absolutely nothing to do with the murders, because it didn't take place at 7 o'clock. It took place much later on. So so yes, for me, Jack Wounds was in a Wheatsheaf, and he was not in Meadow Road.
Okay, Albert, what happens now from going forward from here?
Well, I thought a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, that it'd be all over and I'd be sitting back relaxed watching Blackheath Rugby and doing the Vicky Percival case, because I promised Mum that I would look at that one. So in relation to what happens next, we've got the draft report, the second draft, which should be ready very soon to go to the defence team, to Dean Kingham in particular. We eagerly await the outcome of the parole hearing on the 10th and 11th of May for Michael Steele. Fingers crossed he gets a result there. We're still continuing to search for witnesses, and I've named the people that I want to see and speak to. And the big point is, if we can prove alive after 7 p.m, without who pulled the trigger, without the motive, all that we can park. It's strong, hard, reliable, key evidence that shows that all three were alive after 7 o'clock. And the appeal is to anybody in Essex, or anybody who knows anything about this case in detail, just to pick up the phone and talk to us, and we'll come and see you anywhere and deal with that, your evidence accordingly. So prove alive after 7 o'clock. If it does go to the CCRC, which I sense it will do, how long will it take for them to reply? I would hope they would call for a meeting, and we can man to man sit round a table and agree the fair and sensible way forward. Essex Police, I think, have got to be involved in that, and if at the end of the day that's wrong, if I get what I think is right, that a new team comes in and reinvestigates this case, and they look at what we've highlighted, I think there will be enough intelligence, new evidence, concerns raised to take this before a court of appeal and for justice to be done. And it may well be the case that if we can, say for instance, Nichols was to say now, okay, I've had enough, I've told a lie, and tells exactly what happened, and we can corroborate that, and he will have to be locked away. He's committed an offence.
So Albert, we're starting to round it up there. Thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure as always. We normally get a few comments on when your video goes out, so you're also prepared if there's any more questions to fire another one, is it correct?
Yeah, certainly. We might do that by Zoom or to make it easier than you having to come all the way over to sunny Kent. So yes, more than willing for that to happen. But yeah, listen, for me, it's still about uncovering the truth. You know, I'm only interested in the truth. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or detective. I'm just an experienced retired cop who just wants to help. And can I say now, I ain't giving up. I said that from day one. You think this is over because the Sky documentary has come out, or it comes out tonight, the last one? Well, I think it's just starting, to be quite honest. There are people who are coming forward with great new information that we didn't have a clue about. I'll repeat again, this is a combination of bad behaviours by Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, who were just over the top and ripping off people much higher up the food chain of drugs in Essex and in the East End of London, even the whole country. So watch your space. There might be an interview number 7 with an update, but I do have to be careful around what I say from now on, because I'm really concerned about people poking their nose in where it ain't their business. And if they believe that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe are guilty, then it's job done, because they've done their time, they've been in prison, and they're in the system. Jack's in the system of parole, and we've got Michael, who's category A, aged 80, a political prisoner. So I'll say again, I ain't giving up. Watch this space. Thank you for listening.
Cut now.